Hi Tina, I'm Christy Miller.
I'm Tina, how are you doing today?
It's wonderful. Thank you for joining us at Candidate Conversations, brought to you by Fort Bend Voters League. You may have heard of us. We're a nonpartisan organization that supports voter engagement. In fact, our motto is bringing civility to public discourse. Thank you so much for taking time today to meet with us so people can get to know you in general and get to know what you stand for and your different ideas. So we're very, very excited to have you today. So just to clarify, your name is Tina Michie and you're running for Fort Bend ISD Position 7, correct?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
So, Tina, what do you feel is your biggest motivation to want to serve Fort Bend ISD, and what uniquely qualifies you as a candidate?
I think what is very unique about me is I actually graduated from Fort Bend ISD. I graduated from Hightower High School in 2003. So I think for me that's a unique quality because I'll see things from the student perspective. So I have worked the election process before since 2012, and one thing that I noticed is during the 2018 election, as someone who's worked the polls, now I can't work the polls this election because my name's on the ballot and they disqualified me from that. I noticed some of these young adults didn't get registered through FBISD, so that's one issue that was on my mind when I ran for office. Now there's other issues, of course, beyond that, but you know that was something for me going into 2020 that was important.
So you're a former student, so that's one way you're uniquely qualified, and that was your motivation for wanting to serve Fort Bend?
Yes, ma'am, because you know I went through the advanced program with Fort Bend ISD, which they no longer have the academic advanced and honors program. So I would like to bring that back to Fort Bend ISD. I actually moved into Fort Bend ISD going in high school, and I was in a program where they didn't really have that separation, and Fort Bend did. So I would like to bring that back to Fort Bend ISD.
What do you see as the three biggest challenges for the district, and what are some solutions that you think would effectively help those circumstances?
Yeah, the biggest issue right now is zoning and building new schools. Fort Bend is growing exponentially, and I think that you need someone who can be a planner and someone that is organized. I have a degree in mathematics, so I can see the trend lines of how big this county is going. So that to me, it's like, where are we going to put these schools? I mean, here in Sugarland, there's not a lot of space left to build new buildings, and you know, when people talk about eminent domain, people aren't happy about that. So I think that's right now the biggest issue. The second biggest issue I think is education, and that's because you have a lot of the, children who not all of them are cut off to go to college. I mean, some are, some aren't, and you know, I would like to see more occupational education in the school district. And the third is kind of like the same thing. You know, when I went to the bank to do my campaign finance, open that account, and I had a discussion with the bank person, and they said to me, we have 18-year-olds who don't know how to write a check. So I think we need to bring classes back into the school district that teaches our kids life, you know, things they actually do in life. Bring back things like shop class, home ec. You know, I heard from a student, you know, they were the last people that had home ec. And I mean, it's like, you don't have home ec, I mean, you know, you need to know how to sew and thread a needle and basic skills like that. So I think those are big issues.
So that's some of the challenges that we're facing right now. Now, you touched on this a little bit with the exponential growth in the district, that the socioeconomic makeup of Fort Bend ISD, it really varies greatly from campus to campus, and you touched on that with the zoning issue. What do you think can effectively be done to narrow the achievement gap so every student has opportunity to succeed regardless of zoning?
Right, and I you know, as someone who's graduated from Hightower, I definitely see that on the east side because you know, I've talked to people who like, I want to go to Clements over going to like Hightower, and I don't think that's right because they're one big school district, and that's how I see it. And we have the Great Academy program, And back in 2003, when I graduated high school, they actually had multiple academy programs at Marshall High School, which I didn't even go to Marshall. And now we don't have any academy programs at Marshall. So the question is, how can we make opportunities for these locations that are struggling? And I have a degree in math. My brother, he didn't graduate college, but he didn't. His subject wasn't math.
Right.
So we need to figure out. Every student is different. Okay. So we need to give opportunities for those kids who aren't good at the STEM.
And diversify
and diversify opportunities, and it's not a bad thing to be a carpenter. It's not a bad thing to be a plumber. My dad just paid $125 for a plumber, right?
Yeah.
So, I think we need to look into those opportunities, because I've been to Canada, I've been to Latin America, and I've been to Europe. And in Europe, they have a program where you can actually go into these occupational opportunities when you're in high school, and I think we need to head in that direction.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about your community involvement or district involvement that has put you in touch with the needs of the students, which you've spoken of, but the parents and the teachers as well, to ensure that everyone's needs are met. So what involvement have you had so far, and what would you like to see happen?
So my involvement is very limited outside the school district. Right now I am a tutor. I tutor mathematics, so I do see the ongoing issue with especially the younger kids with like the 3rd to 5th grade. And Texas, we've been against Common Core math for a very long time, but I look at the material and it looks like Common Core math to me. And we don't need that in the schools. We really don't. And like I said before, I have worked in the community as an election judge, and like I said, I can't do that this time. I've been involved in partisan politics. I know this is not a partisan race, but if someone Googles my name, that's going to come up on the Secretary of State's website anyway. That I did that. So I like to be very open about that because I did do that. But I think kids in general isn't a partisan issue, and for me, I would like to use the experience I have already going in front of groups of people. I spoke in front of a state convention in front of 5,000 people, and I think if I can do that, I can also go in front of the State Board of Education and be like, these are things that need to be changed, not just for ISD but all of Texas.
Now, Fort Bend ISD, as I'm sure you're very aware of, is a very diverse community. We speak over 90 languages and dialects. How do you feel we can meet the different needs of our diverse student body and to address diversity?
I grew up in a multiracial household, and I think people look very deeply into race, and I think we need to just treat each other like human beings. That's how I see things growing up in a multiracial family, because I'm Asian. I have 2 white parents. They adopted 2 Korean orphans, so myself and my brother. So for me, when it talks about racial diversity, I grew up in racial diversity, and my parents treat me like their own child. So it's not like, yes, everyone is different, but let's treat everyone with respect. Let's give equal opportunity regardless if you're black, white, Asian, Middle Eastern, right? That's how I see things, and that's because how I was brought up. I don't know if that answers your question, but for me, race is a very touchy issue, being I grew up in a multiracial family, and division for me is something I don't like, because it's like, oh, Tina, you should join this Asian group.
Right.
But my parents wouldn't be invited because they're not Asian.
Sometimes diversity in like language or things like that, or where the parents might have different languages spoken at home, might be a different kind of diversity. Do you feel like the district is serving those kids well, or do you feel there's different ways that we could address the diversity of language?
I think that if you learn a different language at home, that's great. But here in the United States, we don't have an official language here. Unfortunately, you can't be speaking 70 different languages in school. I mean, growing up, we had English as a second language,
Yes,
so
ma'am.
we had those opportunities. So because everything is taught in English here, but we don't need to say we only need to speak English, because here in the United States we don't have an official language. People think we do, but we actually don't. But you know, as someone who's been all over the world, I've been to Brazil, Germany, Mexico, I've been to Canada, and I think knowing English is important, because even for me, traveling, English is the multinational language in other countries. You know, I was in Leipzig airport in the east part of Germany, and they spoke English and German.
Yeah.
I was in Sao Paulo airport, and they spoke Portuguese and English. So yes, you know, it's okay to know all these other languages, but English has become such a diversified language all over the world, and for business. And if we're going to give our kids an edge on the business world growing up and being adults, they have to know English, because it's not just here in the United States, it's all over the world.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. I've noticed that when I've traveled abroad as well. I want to really thank you for your time today and for letting the voters get to know you better and know your personality better and kind of what you bring to the district. So I really do appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Okay, I appreciate it.
I want to remind voters that early voting is April 22nd to April 30th, with Election Day being May 4th. We hope to see you at the polls. Thanks.
Thank you.